One Punch Man is in a rage right now because of the new season and some other drama. So of course everybody's making videos on it, but don't worry, you won't need to sit through all who have followed me on Twitter and who I messaged about this video. Well, that would have been just too long to put as the title now, wouldn't it?
I mean, I don't think this season really ruins the whole anime as a whole, but I do think that we started off quite underwhelming compared to where we left off with One Punch Man 3 years ago. For episode 1, I think they could have just made a little bit more room for recapping and just kind of putting a few tropes of what made One Punch Man so special, just to kind of have a strong setup for the stage for One Punch Man Season 2.
Insultingly terrible. Everything from the animation, the art, the sound design, pacing, editing, story, every single conceivable point is absolutely terrible. I liked season 1, it was funny, witty, paced well, and looked amazing. This show is none of that. It is not the same show, it is a different show entirely. It has a totally different feel.
I am such a fan of the manga and script, as well as the narrative altogether. So for me, that always took the front seat, while things like animation and music, despite the fact that they enhance the story, I don't feel like they're what make the show what it is. So even though, yes, the animation budget dropped and it's not nearly as nice as season 1, and what bothered me even more personally was the actual sound design of the explosions and attacks, none of them impacted me like season 1 did. I mean, Saitama vs. Boros and Saitama vs. Genos are some of those visually and auditorily appealing fights in anime, so obviously it's kinda heartbreaking that One Punch Man isn't getting the same love as it did in the first season.
First episode of season 2 of One Punch Man was disappointing, I guess. Not horrible. I like One Punch Man quite a bit, you know? I think a lot of people would agree with me if I said that the strongest aspect of the first season was its animation and fight choreography, or whatever you want to call it since it's animated. Just the way its fight scenes were portrayed and displayed was really fantastic. But there are other good parts in the story. The characters are funny. The situations they get into are funny. I just really like Saitama. But season 2, the animation is as expected, not anywhere near as good. It's pretty meh, but to me, the bigger problem was that the direction was really bland and that everything just looked worse in general.
One Punch Man is kind of difficult to deal with right now. You either have people are defending it blindly, saying that it's not any way, shape, or form bad. You have people that are hating on it, and you have people that are mutual and just watching it. And I think a lot of the hype that comes around One Punch Man Season 2 is the fact that that's the only thing we're getting from One Punch Man. The animation style hasn't proved anything yet to me to make me defend it. A lot of the action sequences were fast cuts or really zoomed in, and there wasn't that much detail to it. Hell, even the metal that's the Genos and the bad guy was shaded fucking weird. Of course, there's going to be major differences between Madhouse and JC's staff, but I still don't think it's that good. Will I continue watching it? Yes, because that's the only thing I have.
While watching the episode, at first I was pleasantly surprised with what I was seeing. It felt pretty standard for most anime and nothing was particularly bad looking. But then it just went downhill from there. Before I rip into it though, I do want to say the episode wasn't that bad. In fact, it was just pretty average looking. I don't think it's even close to season 1 in terms of quality, but it's still watchable. In fact, I think they told the story of King and Saitama very well, which is something I was happy to see. And Fubuki, my love. The only reason I'll be watching the entirety of the season right there. Bless you. Now, for the bad stuff. It all begins with G4, who looked extremely badass in the manga, but was completely dumbed down for the anime. Which I get has to happen with a lot of things, but they dumbed it down a little too much. Then we have poor Genos, whose design has easily suffered the most out of all the characters. He just looks straight up whack, just look at the poor guy. A lot of the animation was substituted for shaky cam, and the characters themselves didn't seem very defined with their line work. It was just really thin looking.
One Punch Man Season 2? More like One Punch Man Season 2 out of 10. I stole that joke. I can't even use that. I'm sorry. I thought, if anything, it reminded me a lot of Season 1. And I say that because the story felt the same as it's supposed to. And that's the mark of a good anime, honestly. But the animation definitely stood out. It was repulsive, and I never want to have to see it again in my life.
You can definitely tell that the art style of Season 2 is a bit different from Season 1, and the mood seems to be a bit darker. Also, Saitama to me seems to be a bit more mature or serious than I remember. I'm not sure if that's just because of the animation style, or maybe he is maturing as a character now that he is officially Genos' mentor and all of that. However, I do think that the show is still keeping its original charm from season 1. I really liked how they handled the introduction of King, and I thought the whole interaction between King and Saitama was absolutely hilarious.
One Punch Man Season 2 gets a big one punch meh from me. It's not necessarily that the anime is bad, it's just that the opening episode is nothing in comparison to the opening episode of Season 1, and that's all down to its animation. When I think of One Punch Man, I think of an amazing animated spectacle, and when I was watching that opening, I just thought, this is fine, it's fine. And that's not the feeling I should have when I'm watching One Punch Man. I should feel blown away by how incredible the animated cuts are. And that just didn't happen, so it makes me feel like throughout the rest of the season, that's not going to happen at all. However, the thing that I did like was that the core idea of One Punch Man and One's universe is still there. I do like the story, I do like Saitama, so I think if they can hold on to that, we could be in for something pretty decent. Sort of. But I can't help but feel like overall, I was just disappointed by what I saw, and everything just felt fine.
One Punch Man. I watched it. I wasn't offended by it like some people on the internet. The animation, we didn't get to see that much in this episode, except for the fight with Genos, which honestly wasn't that bad. Everyone was making such a big fuss, and I don't care. The show, it's for humor. It's always been humor. Yes, the animation is orgasmic, and it was amazing, but it isn't the reason that I watched the show, and anyone who says that is the only reason they watch the show is an idiot. Bye.
So far, it's just mediocre, I guess. The show still has the wonderful writing of the original series. The problem is, the visual style I feel like holds it back in a much more significant manner than people realize. For example, during the whole fight scene, you can see Saitama and King messing around and having a good time, and yes, it's actually genuinely funny. The problem is, the fighting scenes it's cutting to are also funny, and for all the wrong reasons. You shouldn't be laughing at how bad the CG is or how bad the animation is in a fight scene. One Punch Man Season 1 didn't have that problem. And so, Season 2 is going to be this weird mixed bag of sorts. It won't be a complete disaster or anything, but it's not going to be great.
I tried to be optimistic, right? I tried to go into this thinking, okay, yeah, it's not going to have amazing animation or really creative staff behind it, but it'll be fine. It'll be serviceable. But man, there's just so much going on in this first episode. What is with this gradient on everybody? It makes Saitama look like he's sunburnt. Genos looks like he doesn't belong in the world that he's in.
Seriously. This is not okay. You know, I was expecting One Punch Man, but with bad animation, and I somehow got something even worse. Pacing of the scenes is terrible. The sound design itself is just constant unlistenable. Really obnoxious. The character interactions feel unnatural, and just the general pace feels like this was directed by someone with ADHD. There's no time to take anything in, and everything feels completely unset up. All the emotional stakes of this episode feel like they're relying on getting you to care about this guy King, who I don't know at all, and you didn't give me much of a real introduction to him.
Honestly, I was a lot less disappointed than I thought I would be. It wasn't amazing. It wasn't the greatest thing I ever saw, but I don't know, maybe I just forget how good the animation was on the original, but it was still funny. I still enjoyed it. I thought it was alright, I guess. I don't know.
I went in with some low expectations, but I was very surprised by JC's staff. They managed to match the style of One Punch Man and get near the original quality level the first season had. I think the best example of this, and also the scene I was the most curious about, was the fight scene with Genos. A key aspect to making his fire skills work is actually animating the camera overcompensating for the light and darkening the objects surrounding it. It's a cool little technique that just makes Genos' fire that much more distinctive.
Overall, I enjoyed the first episode and will likely enjoy the entire season considering I love the manga. Does it suck that the artwork looks pathetic compared to Murata and the animation won't be on the level of the previous Studio Madhouse? Of course, and I 100% see where the outrage is coming from. However, One's webcomic is fucking amazing and it looks like crap. One Punch Man is so much more than just cool fight scenes, and none of the stuff I just mentioned is gonna stop me from enjoying the rest of the season.
It sucked, which is a shame because I was kind of expecting it. I mean, you hear JC stuff and it's just, there's no way that could possibly ever compete with Madhouse or anything Madhouse has ever done. I mean, JC Staff can do their best all they want, but they'll never reach that level of animation quality. And it's not even just animation quality, just like the overall pacing of the story. The fact that it focused on King instead of Saitama, even though it's the first episode we've seen of One Punch Man for over 3 years now, if you're just watching the anime. And I honestly didn't care how on point it was to the manga. I didn't care if it was following the manga to the T. Like, there's different ways that you can adapt in an anime that will make it so much more fluid than in the manga. And, you know, waiting a week in the manga is a big difference than waiting 3 years for another season of anime. So, yeah, they could have, you know, actually shown us some things about Saitama that we didn't know, or, you know, at least help us reintroduce us to the story that we haven't experienced in 3 years.
Honestly, it's just disappointing. As much as I don't want to shit on JC Staff because they... Okay, I was going to say they're trying their best, but looking at Shokugeki Season 3, I don't know. Looking at Index Season 3, I don't know. But yes, unfortunately, I'm not going to be watching Season 2. I've watched the first 2 episodes, and I'm highly disappointed. Yo! F that show! Read the manga, man!
I think one of the scenes that kind of was the most underwhelming was the fact when the bird crashed into the building. You would expect, at least for an intro, even if it was for the manga, that Saitama would have at least punched the bird outside of the window, but instead he just kind of pushed it off, and everything was just quite underwhelming. And I think that episode 1 would have worked a little later into season 2.
They pretend to set up these characters like King in this first episode, and then they have this emotional thing halfway through the episode, even though we know this character for like 4 goddamn minutes, and they try and make you have this impactful scene, even though there is nothing set up at all. There is nothing. It is all terrible. The editing sucks. Kill me, please. I hate this show. I think it's the worst anime I've ever seen. Oh, why?
I freaking love King! I've read a bit of the manga, so I knew this ahead. It wasn't this massive plot twist that the strongest man alive was in fact a total wuss. But the truth of the matter is, seeing it take place on screen is amazing. The 2 moments that impacted me most in regards to King's character in this episode, strangely enough, wasn't the scene where he admitted he had no power, and it wasn't the scene where he ran into the bathroom with his tail between his legs. When Lizard Guy was trying to sexually harass a woman on the street, King walked up to him, put his hood down, despite the fact that he didn't need to do this. He would have lost to Lizard Man, but his notoriety, reputation, and death stare scared away Lizard Guy. This says a ton for a character that, if Lizard Guy would have been a bit braver or dumber and not have heard of him, would have easily defeated him in public, destroying his reputation and possibly killing him. And also at the end of the episode, where he's happily playing video games with Saitama beating him because his friendship impacts Saitama tremendously throughout the story and affects Saitama's entire character.
Biggest moment that stood out to me in that episode was the bird crashing into King's apartment. And even though I don't think that was handled horribly or anything, when I went to the manga and read that part, I found it way more dynamic and interesting and powerful in the manga than I did in the anime. So I haven't quite given up on season 2 of the anime yet, but it did kind of get me going, you know, I think I might just go read the manga now, which probably isn't the best response to a show that before I never would have really thought that with, because I enjoyed how it was presented so much.
The font on the opening for season 2 looks like somebody like myself as a YouTuber trying to impersonate the font from season 1. I legit think you can find this font anywhere, on any basic Premiere Pro or Photoshop. Personally, if I had to choose on getting this season 2 or just keeping season 1 where it is by Madhouse, I'd probably pick Madhouse, I'm not gonna lie.
Worst of all is the scene where Saitama is speaking to King in his apartment, and the animation pans from the front of Saitama's face to the back of his head. Oh my god, ew, ew, ew. What is that? What the frick is that? Like, I'm no animator, but I know if you're gonna pan around a character, you at least need to make sure the facial features match up as you're in motion. How the hell did they let that slide?
Janos, whatever his name is, looks like a proper train wreck, but he's still best boy, and I love him.
My favorite part of the whole first episode has to be the fact that even though King can't fight at all in real life, he's much better than Saitama in video game fighting. And I absolutely love the scene where both of them are playing games, and Saitama is complaining that King is taking all the items even though they're supposed to be a team. And then King's like, oh, don't worry, I can handle it on my own, and Saitama gets all frustrated and breaks the controller. That is definitely the type of humor that I expect from One Punch Man, and in that sense, this season has delivered so far.
There's this one scene where Genos is just in the air, floating around, but he does not animate. His hair is animated, but he himself, it's like you took a PNG and just added a shake effect to it. And in addition, just like the gradient on his body is very distracting and doesn't fit in the world it's in, like I said before. But also the color of his body doesn't look right either, mixing like gold and silver and paleness of his skin. It just looks really awkward.
The best moment in the whole episode was when King and Saitama are playing video games together, because it felt the most like, yeah, this is One Punch Man. It's, it's goofy and fun, but they just kind of threw that out with this really long, drawn out, obnoxious action sequence that they kept cutting back to, and I'm like, I don't care about this action sequence, and it doesn't look good. What are you doing?
My favorite scene, or I guess really set of scenes, was anything to do with the Doki Doki Sister video game and King. It was funny and I liked it, because it's funny. It's strong guy with dating sim. He's a siscon, hahaha. I thought it was going to be disappointing, but it was not nearly as disappointing as whenever I sent Sea-Dog my number for a fan call and he didn't pick up. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
The one thing that Saitama is known for, which is to kill people with one punch, or to kill enemies with one punch, they cut that out of the first episode. It's like a straight cut from Saitama grabbing the bird with one hand, and then the next minute the bird's head is blown off, assuming that he one-punched it. But they didn't even show the one punch. They were just like, yeah, he one-punched, you know how it goes, kind of thing. But it's like, we wanted to see that. That's what was cool about the first season. So why would you possibly cut that out? Like, we barely got any Saitama screen time, let alone the screen time that we were all waiting for, you cut out. Good job, JC Staff. Like, I'm sure the animation, we're going to get used to it eventually. I mean, we're kind of forced to get used to it eventually. I just hope that, they pick up on the pacing a little bit better and, not fuck that up.
Now, since people usually don't care for a wall of text or a 20-minute thorough review and just want a symbolic number at the end with bullet points of what was good and bad because they're lazy, then here you go, I guess. I asked everyone to rate the episode with their thumbs, and this is what came of it. If you do some kindergarten math with your hands and find the average, then it seems like the anime community has given it 1/3 of a thumb up, which is slightly above just okay. What a shocking result, I know. So these have been every anime YouTuber's thoughts on One Punch Man Season 2 Episode 1. If I decide to do another episode one day of this series and you're an AniTuber and want to be in it, then follow me on Twitter. Jesus Christ, is it really that hard to hit the follow button? Like, come on. And if you're a watcher who's interested in everybody that took part in it, then their links are in the description. And hey, why not stick around and subscribe to my channel? I promise I got more good stuff coming. I'm pinky promising, so you know that I'm not messing around.